Hey everybody, the time has come. You're going to want to save this one to your favorites so that you can refer to it later. So, you've identified a limiting belief, but you haven't released it yet. And maybe you're wondering, how do I do this? So this is a whole field of study in and of itself, and I can't unpack the whole field in one short video, but I have cleared many limiting beliefs in myself and in my clients, and so I can tell you what usually works. So the first thing, the most important thing, is to just affirm, I intend to clear this interference. And eventually, you hold that intention long enough, and eventually the interference will dissolve. There's a lot of variables with that as far as how long it's going to take. So the other thing that you can do, and this can be more expedient, but it's more involved. This is a condensed version of the Lefko process for eliminating limiting beliefs, which is, that's kind of complex. There's a lot to that whole process, but this is like a streamlined, condensed version. And generally speaking, this is sufficient to clear limiting beliefs permanently. So you have a limiting belief, you've acknowledged it, you've identified it, you've tried to release it, you've affirmed that you dissolve it or release it, but it's still there, it keeps coming up, you still feel this attachment to it. And even though maybe intellectually you comprehend that the belief isn't true, it's still coming up, you're still feeling an emotional response to it. So ask yourself, have I ever seen I'm not good enough, or whatever the limiting belief is? Your mind may insist that you have seen the limiting belief, but notice that everything that you can see has a shape, a color, and a location. But a belief has none of these qualities. So you have never seen I'm not good enough, or whatever the limiting belief is. So just notice that and ask yourself, have I ever seen I'm not good enough, or whatever the belief is? And whatever the mind says, just acknowledge that it's not possible for you to have seen the belief, because everything that you can see has a shape, a color, and a location, and beliefs don't have any of those. So you've never seen I'm not good enough, or whatever the limiting belief is. So now ask yourself, have I ever felt I'm not good enough, or whatever the belief is? Again, the mind may insist that you have felt it, but considering that if you removed the words, the meaning, and you taught only the sensation that you associate with that belief to 100 other people, very few, if any of them, would conclude that the sensation means I'm not good enough, or whatever the belief is. So you've actually never felt I'm not good enough, or whatever the belief is. And so you go through this, you repeat this. Ask yourself, have I ever seen I'm not good enough, or whatever the limiting belief is? Ask yourself, have I ever felt I'm not good enough, or whatever the belief is? And notice that now that you've decoupled the sensation, the images, and the belief itself, that it's no longer bound together, and it dissolves the more that you decouple the components, the sensations and experiences, and the limiting belief. So if you do this exercise, asking, have I seen, felt this limiting belief several times, and you feel like and you still feel like you have seen or felt the limiting belief, ask yourself, is part of me reluctant or hesitant to let go of this limiting belief and allow that part of your psyche to come forward? Very likely that part of your psyche is when you were a young child, possibly very young. So ask them why they're reluctant or hesitant to let it go. Ask them what their intentions are. because the parts of our psyche that hold limiting beliefs always have good intentions. We always had good intentions when we took on limiting beliefs because it made sense to us in the context that we established that belief in. So listen to the part of your psyche that's holding that limiting belief, compassionate them, but let them know that you're older now and you've learned that the limiting belief is not true, and we can let it go. And you might have to coax them consistently over time. Like sometimes that happens, not always. Usually you negotiate with this part of your psyche that's holding this limiting belief, and they will be happy to let it go. But if they're hesitant, you just be consistent, just be sincere. Be like, okay, I'll come back and talk with you tomorrow, and you do that consistently, because clearing these limiting beliefs is going to open your life up in ways that you can't even imagine. Like the limiting beliefs that people hold are the main obstacle to what they want. But this is only with limiting beliefs that are resistant to the process that we talked about earlier. Just separating the sensation, the belief, and the images associated with it is generally enough.